those who have to leave will go. I just want to, I saved one important thank you, which is for the end, so you'll know who they are. But my brother Robert, Bob, I want to say thank you. Jane, also my Aunt Joan, and they're all here, and they were such a huge part of making the film. So thank you so much. Please. Stand up, maybe. There he is. There's Bob. Yay! And Jane. And Aunt Joan.
Joan's right next to Bob.
Okay. Anyway.
You said that there was a story about the footage. Was some of the footage lost? Or?
Well, what happened was I started, I was shooting over so many years. And in that period, I would have they weren't the same producers. So one person might produce one weekend, and then another, and by produce, I mean that, buy the coffee and the water and like get whatever the footage was, the stock and so on, and bring it with us, and then we'd bring it back. And so it ended up in all different storage facilities. And so by the time I came 5 years ago, right, 6 years ago, I called Damon, and I said, I can't stand it anymore. I have to find all this footage and like put it and do something with it and really take care of it. And it was quite a saga trying to figure where it all was, and
It was in Fort Lee, New Jersey.
Okay, great.
As it turns out.
Where a lot of footage is, right? No, seriously.
In 8 different formats.
Yes, I was going to ask about that. And were they all stable? Did all the footage survive?
There was definitely some damage, and luckily some of it had been backed up on beta, but the whole process of digitizing it and transcribing it, and there was no money to start, so it was sort of self-funded, and then we got a grant from the Righteous Persons Foundation, and then HBO came in and saved the day. So
Yes.
Thank you to HBO for making this movie happen.
You can keep the round of applause going for HBO.
They're as amazing as everybody says they are.
They really are.
You hear the stories, then you work with them. It's incredible.
When you went back and started working on the footage, I guess that you hadn't revisited it for a long time. That must have been quite an experience for you, too.
It was overwhelming. I mean, we had it all transcribed, so I could read it also. And then, of course, there's a lot of it was just images. But it was really overwhelming, and it took a long time, and a long time processing it and finding out what kind of film it could be, because it could have been it was 200,000 feet of film. There was so much of it, and that was just my film, not even the archival stuff. Yeah, so it took a long time, and but I sort of had an idea of a basic structure early on, and it ended up being the structure that we kept.
Mm-hmm. I have to say, the thing that I think I told you after seeing the film that I found so moving about it, among many things, but this in particular, is the fact that he was so honest about what you refer to in the film as his disappointments, and took them in such a beautiful way. I think experienced them.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely remember this sort of moments that he would have where you knew that he was thinking, and he would actually sometimes say, too bad, whatever it was. And now having made the film, I think I know more what he was talking about. But he definitely had a sense of some disappointments and regrets, and yeah.
But then, they were washed away by these incredible triumphs at the end of his life, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you still have that stereo?
No, sadly, it burned in a fire, and I'm so sad. It was hilarious. I mean, it was really something, and it had one huge mono speaker. That was that big.
Questions from the audience? This is a question from a gentleman who's making a film also about a family member, in this case his grandfather. So the question is, did Rebecca struggle to... I'm sorry.
Did you ever feel uncomfortable really showing perhaps some things you felt maybe uncomfortable about?
Was she uncomfortable showing things that her father felt uncomfortable about?
Well, things that I felt uncomfortable. Well, I mean, you know what? I tried to get to not judge him. I mean, I don't judge my characters anyway, and even when I'm making them up. And I felt that, so as a filmmaker, I felt it was important to allow him to reveal himself to a degree and not try and impose myself on him too much, if you know what I'm saying. there were certainly things, I mean, I talk about the stuff that I actually didn't manage to even, do an interview. I was so uncomfortable that I didn't do the interview. And then I had to kind of find a way of talking about it later, and we did the best we could. And I mean, David was so hugely helpful in that way. But, I think you can't pretend to be other than you are if you're making a movie about someone you loved very much. You can't pretend to be someone who didn't care about them, because that would be a lie. And I really did try to be truthful. So,
how did you arrive at the inclusion of your voice in the manner in which you recorded it? It sounds like you're being interviewed, and you're.
Do you want to talk
not
about
reading
that?
Narration.
Yeah. Is this on? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, initially we didn't want to center it too much on Rebecca's voice entirely. We didn't want it to be like a total personal film. We wanted to approach it from many different angles. And so it was this balance of kind of not doing voiceover, but not making it a personal film, but just trying to incorporate her voice in like a very natural way. And once she's born, she starts talking more because she had lived through those moments and experienced it. Whereas before it's a little less, but we still needed her in there to kind of ground us in certain moments of time. And so yeah, it was constant.
And what we did was a lot of that is just on the iPhone, and it's me talking to David. And because of our relationship and I trusted him a great deal. And so gradually, and over the years, he really got to know me very well. And so we would just have these conversations. And what's beautiful about the iPhone is it's so casual. So it's just, there it is, and you're just holding it, and it feels like nothing. And so rather than sort of be the narrator or somebody who knows best, I just thought, I'm just one of the siblings really talking. And that's how we arrived at that.
And you're not placing your voice in a studio, kind of isolated sonically.
Exactly, yeah. And then we use the time bends. That's the one that's been isolated sonically, and then you get the feeling, this is sort of, the voice from on high, because it's his voice, and that makes sense, Yep.
Yep. Did your dad ever ask you what's going on with the film?
Are you actually making a film? Or are you? That's funny. I think he had a very strong sense I was making a film at a certain point, yeah. But I did say, you know what, in the beginning it was just more casual, and then as I committed myself to being a filmmaker, as I made my first film, what happened was I won. There was something called the Gotham Prize. It still is. But it used to be, the Gotham Prize used to be a bunch of 16mm film. And so I won all this film, and I said, this was way back, and I said, let's start making this, shooting this film. And so a bunch of us went down and we started doing these interviews, and I started doing the interviews, and Ellen Kuras shot it, and also Einar Westerlund shot a lot of it, and he's here. And we, and by that time, he was very well aware that I was making a film. But it was like, he was pretty cool about it. I mean, we did it, and then he didn't ask me, 15 years went by, and he didn't say, whatever happened to that film. So I was just shooting here and there, and my whole idea was I didn't even know that I was necessarily going to make this into a film. I thought, I've got to get the footage, because I felt that I could get the footage, and I could get intimate footage with him, where he was really himself. And I thought maybe I would leave it to my children if I ever had children. At that time I didn't, or something like that. But at least just put it in the vault, get it, in the can, and then gradually I came around to the idea of actually cutting it together.
Cindy, can you talk about your reaction to the film and your relationship with it?
Well, it's amazing because the person that I knew is also the man that you would see, at home. So I would come up on the weekends and we would just hang out, and when I would walk to the backyard, he would say, "Oh my God, finally you're here. Come in, sit down. What is happening in the theater?" And this is in 2000, or he would call and he said, "My daughter said that I need to call you. You need to tell me who should direct my new plays." And I'm like, wait a minute. Who am I? But that was the man. It was just childlike in every way. And he gave a play, I would go and he would give a play, a new play he had been working on. And he said, "Read this." And, and I would come down for breakfast and he said, "Did you finish it? What do you think?" And I'm like, "I didn't finish it." And then I realized I better go back up and finish. I mean, it was just constant, is this good? Am I working on something that, people want to see? Is it? But that's the man,
Were there any days when he really didn't want to be filmed?
Well, there might have been, but he got filmed anyway. I mean, he didn't say I don't want to be filmed.
Okay.
I think it was a deal, and I wasn't doing it constantly. So, but no, I mean, we would get up really early in the morning and film everything. And we would, when we were working, I mean, Einar was saying, we would get up at 7, film all day, film all night, film the party. And we have a lot of stuff that we didn't use, we weren't able to use, but there's a lot of stuff of just life,
Oh, there's a microphone there.
Oh, there's a microphone.
And it's flying in. Look at that. Here it comes. It's exciting. Here it is.
I was amazed at his comments about Kazan after his testimony before the committee. And I was just wondering, did they ever work together again after that? And what happened to their relationship?
Well, the relationship.
With Kazan, yeah, that was a little low. It's a comment about the relationship with Ilya Kazan and his comments about the testimony. And did they work together again? They did, and after the fall.
They did, exactly, yeah. He did ask Kazan to direct after the fall. And so that came after. And I think he, thought, look, he's still a great director, and why should I blacklist him just because, why should I not work with him? And they did. But I don't think their friendship really ever recovered from it completely.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for telling at the beginning that this movie, this documentary belongs to us. It was great for me. And in the chapter Out of Place, he says that in Europe, his art worked all right. It was recognized. And I am a European, I am an Italian, and for us, Arthur Miller is King Arthur Miller, okay? So we grow up with his plays and he's very recognized. I was wondering, what's the perception now of this country towards Arthur Miller? Is he being recognized eventually?
Oh, I think that now, I do think that overall there's a sort of sense that he's certainly come back in a strong way, and I think especially after he died, there've been quite a lot of successful productions, and I think that in a way that whole rather very long period where it was just one disaster after another has sort of been forgotten, which is nice.
You're bringing it back.
Yeah, bringing it back.
But have those later plays they've had new lives?
Well, some of them
the
have.
American
I mean, like
podcast,
View from the Bridge wasn't particularly embraced at the
Right.
time.
It was a very successful
Right,
production by
and that's
Ivo Van
been
Hove.
successful. And then some. I mean, I believe American Clock is coming back soon, which was one of the ones that Cindy's actually.
Yeah, we're going to produce it at the Old Vic in 2019.
Right. And that's going to be great. It's very timely play. And I think, like he said, some of them may not come back and be embraced, but there's one thing that we didn't make it into the film, and that's what Tony was saying, that these plays generally are very stage worthy. Whichever play it is, they tend to be stage worthy, so they tend to be performed. They tend to, because people are always looking for plays, and so you never know. You never know what'll happen to a play.
How much did you learn that was new information to you while making the film about your father?
Well, I learned a lot. I learned a lot partly because, of course, normally people don't know, nor do they really want to know so much about their parents before they themselves were born. And there were times where I was cutting the film with David, and I really felt like I really should not even be there. I was just thinking, ugh. There were moments where I felt, I don't know, it was a strange feeling. It was a strange feeling. I don't know exactly how to describe it. Entering a zone that wasn't really meant to be entered by me in some way. But I do highly recommend everybody to make a film about their parent, because it's like you can see them with a little distance all of a sudden. And one thing that, I think I didn't have a real sense of the value even of what he was saying in some of those interviews. Some of the things that he does say, I think, are so helpful for any artist or anybody trying to just do something of worth, you know? And I was only able to really recognize it later. So it's not that there were huge revelations of fact, but more that I think what I sort of got out of it was a lot of the wisdom that he had to, you know, after a long life of being an artist. And I was able to absorb that more later, I think. David,
what was that like on your end as Rebecca was discovering that stuff? What kinds of interactions were you guys having? How long was the edit, by the way?
It was like maybe a year and a half or something like that, and it was like a big process, and the film went through different versions and like
very different versions.
I mean, we had a great working relationship, so I think like it was just a process of discovery for both of us doing it, and yeah, I think you know, as an editor, just being in the room with someone making a film about their parent, you want to work with them like you were making a film about your parent, you know, and understand how certain parts will be uncomfortable and certain parts will be a discovery, and certain parts were exciting for both of us when we realized how great a certain piece of interview was. So, yeah.
Yeah, and some of it was very emotionally difficult for me to watch, and then you just have to live with that, and that's just part of it. That's what you signed up for. But yeah. I can't hear that.
The Marilyn Monroe material, how painful was it for you to...
That wasn't so painful, but that was the part that was a little weird and embarrassing, some of it. Some of that felt strange to me. But I mean, only because, of course, that's not an aspect of my father that I knew. I mean, even the relationship with Mary, honestly, the first romance was I tell you, one of the things that did surprise me as I sort of dug through it was some of the letters of his earliest self, were so puppyish and romantic and kind of like vulnerable in a certain way. And, he was an old workhorse by the time I knew him. He'd been through so much, and there was this sort of tenderness about him early on that, and also when you look at him, like, I think he's quite different from, like, his manner is quite different as a young man. Like, there's a certain, like, uber confidence that he had when he was really young, and that isn't really there anymore at the end.
That's an odd moment when it's Mike Wallace who's interviewing him when he says, "How Jewish are you?"
Yeah.
Interesting question. We have to wrap it up to make room for the next show. Everybody get to work making those movies about your parents. And, thank you so much.
Thank you.